welcome back to Freezer Tech. In this tutorial, we'll be going over error handling in Python. This tutorial is a continuation of our Python series, so if you haven't begun watching from the beginning and you want to learn Python, you can go back and start from the beginning of this playlist. So, as we know that whenever we create a program, the programmers might run into some issues which may cause our program to crash. So for example, you can think of, you have created a calculator. This calculator takes in numbers, but for some reason the user decides to type in letters. This will not work, right? This will cause our program to crash. But as programmers, we need to prevent our program from crashing despite of the user inputs. So to do this, we need to go into topic of error handling. Okay, so let's get to it. So I've opened up my Visual Studio Code and I have a file named errorhandling.py. So let's get started. So I have a simple program here that takes in the user's age and prints it out on the screen. So let's run this and see what we get. So it's asking for my age. Maybe I'll input 50. So I get 50 output on the screen. So this program is fine, right? This is how we intend our program to work. But let's imagine a user for some reason decide to type in his name. So he types in Prince. And by the way, Prince Cramper is my name, not James. Some people have been saying my name is James. It's actually Prince Cramper. So if I type in my name, I'm the bad user, right? I have typed in Prince Cramper. What do you think our program will do? Because if you come over here, you can see that we are converting the input into an integer. Do you think Python can convert a string into an integer? If you don't know, you can check back our data conversion tutorial. So let's run this. This would tell us an error. So we get an error simply saying that you can convert a string into an integer. And our program crashed. So how do we prevent our program from crashing? Okay, how do we prevent our program from crashing? So to prevent our program from crashing, we can use TryAccept and finally blocks in Python. So let's begin with the try. The try block takes in an expression that you want to execute but might return an error. For example, this expression might return to us an error. That's why we are saying try to do this. What if we get an error? We have to accept that error, accept the error, and then we can maybe print something out. You can say wrong user input. Okay, so we are printing out on the screen wrong user input. So we are trying to try to get the user's input, convert it to an integer, and print it on the screen. In case you get an error, we go to the exception block where we accept that error, but in here we are not accepting the error, we are just printing out user input. We'll be accepting the error in a second. So let's run this code and see if our program will crash. So I will type in here 50. It works fine, we didn't get any errors. So let's imagine the bad user comes again. Instead of typing in his age, for some reason he types in his name. Okay, so if I run this, you see our program didn't crash, it just printed out wrong user input. So try and accept has helped us to prevent our program from crashing. Okay, so now let's try to accept the error that Python is actually throwing at us. So to accept the error, we'll say accept exception as, you can give it any name you want. I'll call it error. So I'm going to print wrong user input, and then I'll add to it here the error. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. So I'll type in my name. So we get cannot concave. Okay, this happened to be str. Let's convert the error into a string, and then we try to print it out. So let's run this again. So I will type in my name. You see, we get wrong user input. Okay, I should keep some spaces here, but you can see we are getting the error. Let me just correct that. Okay, let's run this again. Type in my name. So we're getting wrong user input, invalid literal for int base 10 prints. So it's simply saying that it can convert the string prints into an integer. okay, because you can convert a string into an integer. So try to do this. If you fail, accept the exception as an error. So you're storing that exception in error, you're converting that error into a string, and then you're printing it out on the screen. So that's how we deal with try and accept. So exception, accept exception as error. So you can accept the exception as errors, but you can also accept different other things. So for example, let's remove this statement, we don't need it, and in here we're going to say 1 divided by 0. We all know that you can, in mathematics, you can divide 1 by 0. Okay, this is undefined. So if you run this, you're going to get an error in Python. So let's try to run this and see what we get. We get division by 0 error. Okay, so let's see what the actual error is. So to see what the actual error is, let's remove all of this, and then we remove this, and then just run this again. So you're getting let's remove all of this, and then I print here 1 divided by 0. So 1 divided by 0 is going to throw at us an error. So let's run this and we see which error we get. We're going to get an error which says that you can divide 1 by 0, because you can divide any number by 0, which will return to you undefined. So we run this program, we're getting 0 division error. So the name of the error is 0 division. So now this is the error which you're getting if you try to divide by 0. So let's try to copy this error, and this so we are trying to accept. Here we can input the name of the error as error, okay, and then in here we can print str and then error. Okay, so we are trying to divide 1 by 0, which is not possible. So we are expecting a specific error, and that error's name is division error, the error 0 division error. So we are expecting a specific error which is named as 0 division error, and we are taking that error and we are printing it out on the screen. Okay, so let's run this and we see we get the error which is saying division by 0. So you can divide a number by 0. That's why you're getting the division error. Okay, so now let's move on. So that errors come with different names. So if you're writing a program and the program is continuously crashing, maybe for example you're trying to int, and then you're passing a string, maybe prince. Okay, so now let's try to run this. We'll get an error. So you see here we get value error. So the name of the error is value error. So if we go back to our okay, that's why. So you're going to expect another type of error which is known as value error. I believe it's value error. So we'll get value error when you're trying to convert an integer into a string into an integer. So if I run this code right now, you'll see we'll get it wrong. So it's supposed to be value, okay, defined wrong. So it's supposed to be value, okay, int base 10 you can do value error. So now let's run this code again and see what we get. You see we get proper which says that int base 10 you can do value. So we expected value error. So these errors have different names, so but you can know the name of all errors. That's why if you don't know the name of a specific error or which error you're going to expect, they say expect exception as error. Means that you can expect any kind of error if you don't know the name of the specific error that you're expecting to get. So most of the time I usually use accept this exception as error, then I do something that accept exception in case you don't know the name of that error. So that's how we deal with errors in Python. So imagine that after our program, we create a program here. Let's create another program that takes in let's say age. It will be equals to input which will say age. So you input your age here, and then we'll take age, we'll convert into an integer. So we'll try to convert into an integer. In the process we might get an error, maybe due to a poor user input, but at the end of our program we want to print by. Okay, so despite of us getting an error or not getting an error, we want to print by. You might think we can just put in here by, right? So let's try to do this. So we'll input our age, and then we got by. But in some cases, this is not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is actually putting here finally. So finally, print by. Okay, this is a string. So try to do this. In case you get an error, we'll accept that exception as error. We'll print out that error, and then we'll print out by. So this by will be printed regardless of getting an error or not getting an error. So for example, let's try our program. The first time I will input the correct value, means we will not get an error. So I write this, I get by at the end. So what if I also input a wrong value? Or will our program stop executing? So now let's try to run this. So let me input here my name, print. So I put a name, and then we got wrong user export, and then it also printed by. So it printed for us the error, and then also printed by. Okay, so this whatever is in the final block will be executed despite of getting an error or not getting an error. So if you try to run this and then get an error, this block will be exempted, mean that it won't be executed, and then the final block will be executed. If you run this also, in the case you get an error, this will be executed, and also this will be executed. So the finally will be executed despite of getting an error or not getting an error. So if you create a program and you try to print out something despite of getting an error or not getting an error, you can decide to use the finally keyword. So for example, so that brings us to this end of error handling in Python. So let's try to do something. Let's create a simple calculator in Python. So let's calculate, I'll call it so I'm going to use functions because I've studied functions in the previous tutorial, and also we're going to use error handling to deal with user error. So you're going to see how you're going to connect these two ideas together. So let's have a function, I'll call it UI. It takes in no parameters. UI stands for user interface, okay, which is going to interact with the user. So number one, it should be, I'm going to take the user input for the number. So ask him first number. So ask the user for first number, and then we'll copy this and paste it over here. So this will be number 2, and this will be second number. Okay, second number. So we're asking the user to input two numbers, the first number and the second number. Okay, because our calculator is going to take in two inputs. The first input will be the first number, second input the second number, and you'll be able to add or do other mathematical calculations with this number. Okay, so after that you're going to print out on the screen. I'm going to use a multi-line print statement. So in here I'm going to just give tell the user select an operation. So I think the user to select an operation, and then let's give it a bit of decoration. We'll draw a line over here, and then in here we'll print the first number. The first operation will be addition, and then the second operation to be subtraction. Okay, so subtraction. So our calculator is going to have two main purposes. It's going to be able to add two numbers. It's going to add, or it's going to do subtraction calculations. Okay, you can just make this to be equal to the first line, and then also here. Okay, so something like that. Okay, so we have this. So our program will start. We'll call the UI function, which will ask the user for his inputs in this, and then you print out this on the keyboard, asking him to input his number. So we need to give him an input field, which we call it operation, which will be equals to input, and then we'll be able to input a value in here. Okay, so this is a UI function which is going to return to us. It's going to return to us the first number. The first number, the second number, and then our operation. Okay, so it's going to have the first number, second number, and then an operation. So this is what our UI function does. It's going to ask the user for his first number, second number, give him a list of operations that he or she can select from, and then we return those operations. Okay, because this is just to interact with the user. What this our function does. So I'm going to create a function here, which is def. I'm going to call it addition. So this takes in two numbers, the first number, the second number, and it returns the sum of them. So the first number plus the second number. So that's how our addition function does. We'll just copy this and paste it over here. So this will be called the subtraction. So this will take in also two numbers but return the difference between the two numbers. Okay, so this is our two main functions. So let's put all of this together. So we are going to say if let's call our UI function here. So we're going to call the UI function is going to return to us number 1, number 2, and an operation which is going to come from our UI function. So we're going to call our UI function is going to have the first number, second number, and the third number, and an operation. So if operation is equals to 1, we'll print the sum of those numbers. So we're going to call the addition method, and we're going to pass in number 1, comma number 2. Okay, so else means that it did not pass, the operator isn't 1. Since we have only two functions, we'll call in the subtraction function and we'll pass in number 1 and number 2. Okay, so that's our function our program does. So let's just go over to it again. So in here I can see that we'll get an error. Do you know why? Because in here it should be an integer. This thing, okay. So you're going to get an integer, and then that integer is going to compare it if the integer value is 1. If it's 1, you're going to call in the addition function. Since our first operation is 1, so we add those two numbers together, or we'll call in the subtraction operation, which will come in over here and do the subtraction for us. So that's what our calculator basically does. And you can see also here we need to convert this into an integer. So we need to convert this into an integer, but this has a weakness. Do you know why? When I convert this into an integer, what if the user passes in a float value? Our program will crash. So to prevent this, we will use a float instead, because a float is like decimal floating point number. So if a person passes a decimal floating point number into a calculator, it will crash. But a person wants to add maybe 20.3 plus 20.3, our calculator should be able to do that. That's why I'm putting this into a float. So now our calculator should work just fine. So let's try to run it. Hopefully we get no error. It says as for the first number, we'll input 20, and then could not convert string to float second number. Okay, why do we get that? Okay, I know why, because here we forgot to put in the input. Okay, so input over there, and then we close off this. So now let's try to run it. Hopefully we get no errors. So we'll get in the first number, we'll convert into a float. We'll get in the second number, we'll convert into a float as well. So we'll get in the first number 20, the second number 30, and then as for an operation, I'll say 1, and then we get 30, because 20 plus 30, which is 20, and it does to us 50.0 because we are working with floats and not integers. Okay, so our program works fine in case the user inputs the correct answer, the correct data type. Now let's imagine a scenario where a user inputs maybe his name instead of a number. Our program has crashed because we can convert an integer into a float point number. So this is where we can use try and accept blocks. So we try, and then we accept the exception as exception as error, and then we'll let the user know that they have a wrong input. So wrong user input, and then we'll print for them what the computer says. So str will convert that error into an integer and we'll try to print it out on the screen. So let's this is our code. Let's try to run it. So let's run. So now our program should be fortified against any bad user input. So for example, if I type in here prints, okay, we got here wrong user input could not convert a string to a float, and then you can see our program still comes down here. So after we print this, we want to break. So we want to break means that we want to no, we are not in a for loop, so we can't break of this. So let's try this. Exit. So let's try to exit. So let's run. So we'll put in the first yes. Okay, we still get that with our exit function isn't working. Is it an exit this way? I'm not sure. Let's try to run this. Okay, so now you can see that our program has successfully exited. So it's actually exit is actually a method. So if you run this again for the second time, what you can see is asking for a first number. So if I input here the correct number and then 10, and then I want to subtract them, so I say 2, and then so is it 20 minus 10, which is 10 actually, yeah. So that's how our basic calculator works. So I advise you to develop this calculator even more. You can put in more options and operations like multiplication, division, and you can check out for all those errors using TryAccept. You can check for division error, zero division error, and all those other types of errors. So you can put all of this also in TryAccept blocks here in case you're doing division or multiplication. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this tutorial. Please go on and advance this calculator to get more experience working with Python. So thanks for watching. If you have any question, you can leave in the comment section below, or you can follow me on Instagram at FreezoTech. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.